Good morning, distinguished delegates. I call the first meeting of the Committee of the Whole of the 14th session of the Conference of the Parties to the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification to order. Distinguished delegates, I take this opportunity to thank you for the confidence you have placed in me as your chair for the Committee of the Whole during this 14th session of the Conference of the Parties. I wish to assure you that your confidence will not be taken for granted. My promise is that I will be diligent and steadfast in my service to you throughout the Conference of the Parties. Distinguished delegates, we are assembled here at a very critical juncture in the history of our convention. It is no secret that of the three Rio conventions, the UNCCD has received the least political support and indeed the least resources. Yet the reliance on our work is overwhelming and remains vital to every sphere of our lives. Undoubtedly, our work is attracting greater attention, and with it, more demands. The question I put to you, distinguished delegate, is, are we prepared for the challenge? And if we are, what critical steps are we willing to take? In our discussions over the next 2 weeks, I ask you to be deliberate, but do be mindful that compromise will be needed. Let us endeavor to manage prudently the large number of items on the agenda and the limited time available to us. I therefore encourage facilitators of the various contact groups to pay attention to the management of the process to allow for timely conclusions of the negotiations. Distinguished delegates, as you may recall, the Conference of the Parties yesterday adopted its agenda for the 14th session as contained in document ICCD-COP14/1 and the tentative schedule of work contained in the annex of the same document. Paragraph 16 and its subparagraphs A to F of the annotations to the agenda list issues that have been allotted to the Committee of the Whole. These encompasses items 2, 3, sub-item A of 3, 6, and 7 of the agenda of the Conference of the Parties. I now invite the committee to turn its attention to the establishment of contact groups and the appointment of facilitators of these contact groups. The Bureau has proposed the establishment of 2 contact groups of the committee. Contact Group 1, which will deal with budget, and Contact Group 2 to deal with other matters. Under Agenda Item 2, Integration of Sustainable Development, Goal 15 and related Target 15.3 into the implementation of the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification and Land Degradation Neutrality. And B, modalities, criteria, and terms of reference for a midterm evaluation of the UNCCD 2018-2030 Strategic Framework. And C, implementation of the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, Communication Plan, and the United Nations Decade for Deserts and the Fight Against Desertification. Under Agenda Item 3, promotion and strengthening of relationships with other relevant conventions and international organizations, institutions, and agencies. Follow-up B, follow-up on the policy frameworks and thematic issues. Follow-up on advocacy policy framework, drought, follow-up on advocacy policy framework, gender, migration and security, dust and storm, and land tenure. And under agenda item 7, participation and involvement of civil society organizations in meetings and processes of the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification. B, participation and involvement of the private sector in meetings and processes of the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification and the business engagement strategy. And C, program of work for the 15th session of the Conference of the Parties, including the date and venue of the 15th session. Distinguished delegates, it is my understanding that the regional groups are still holding consultations with regard to the nomination of facilitators for the 2 contact groups. In the meantime, I propose that I, as chair of the committee of the whole, facilitate the first meetings of these groups in order to address the issue. May I take it that the committee wishes to establish the 2 contact groups as proposed by the Bureau and to allow me as chair of the COW to facilitate the first meeting of each contact group on the understanding that facilitators will be appointed once identified. I hear no objection. It is so decided. The timing of these meetings will be announced once determined. Distinguished delegates, I now invite the committee to begin its consideration of agenda item 6, sub-item A, entitled Program and Budget for the Biennium 2020-2021, for which you have before you the following documents: ICCD/COP14/6 and ICCD-COP14/7 and ICCD/CRIC18/2. Distinguished delegates, I now give the floor to the representative of the UNCCD Secretariat, Mr. Linda Lindo, to introduce the reports.
Thank you, Chair. In accordance with paragraph 18 of Decision 10/COP13, the Executive Secretary has prepared a proposal for the program and budget for the biennium 2020-2021, which includes the multi-year work plan and work program. As may have been seen in the documents, the core budget of the UNCCD Secretariat and the Global Mechanism have remained virtually unchanged since 2010. As such, the Secretariat has had to use the same budget to fund salaries, including salary step increments earned within grade, and recent decision of the International Civil Service Commission to increase salaries for the bond duty station, and the costs of goods and services that have increased over time to implement the work program, effectively creating a core budget with diminishing capacity to deliver on mandated work. The Executive Secretary, who is mindful of the challenges that parties face in their respective home countries, proposes a budget adjustment for inflation amounting to 1.5%, based on projections for inflation in Europe over the next 2 years. The budget proposal also includes a second scenario whereby the budget remains at its current level of resources. It is important to note that neither scenario requests to increase the number of positions. Finally, the documents provide parties with an update on managing the Secretariat's liability of after-service health insurance, which was estimated to be $13.8 million United States dollars by the end of 2018, and reviews the proposal that is currently being considered by the United Nations General Assembly for possible implementation on 1 January 2022. The Secretariat looks forward to further discussions with parties on budget and these issues in the course of the week. The Budget Contact Group will meet tomorrow at 1:30 p.m. The room announcement will be made later in the day. Thank you.
I thank the representative of UNCCD Secretariat for his statement. Are there any party or delegations wishing to make a statement in connection with the reports that were just introduced? I see none. I give the floor to representatives of the Secretariat. Sorry, we have just concluded the general discussions on sub-item 6A. Distinguished delegates, I now invite the committee to begin its consideration of agenda item 6, sub-item B, entitled Financial Performance for the Convention Trust Funds, for which you have before you the following documents: ICCD-COP14/8 and ICCD-CRIC-18/3, ICCD/COP14/9, and ICCD/COP14/10. And finally, ICCD/COP14/11. I give the floor to the representative of UNCCD Secretariat, Mr. Lindo, to make the introductory statement.
Thank you, Chair. As set out in the financial rules of the COP and as amended at COP13, financial audited statements of account for the first and second year of the biennium have been provided to parties. In the document on financial performance, I wish to draw the attention of parties to the proposal to establish a minimum contribution to the Convention as implemented by the General Assembly of the United Nations in its resolutions related to the scale of assessment. These matters will be further discussed in the course of the contact group on program and budget. Thank you.
Thank the representative of the UNCCD Secretariat for his statement. I now give the floor to the representative of the United Nations Board of Auditors, Mr. Christian Edelman, to make an introductory statement.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished delegates. Today I've got the honor to introduce the main findings of two of our reports, 2018-2017, on UNCCD to you. This presentation is on behalf of the Board of Auditors, and maybe for your background, the Board of Auditors consists of 3 members, the Auditor Generals or Presidents of Supreme Audit Institutions. It's Mr. Marishi from India, it's Mr. Bermudez from Chile, and Mr. Scheller, the President of the German Federal Court of Auditors. Mr. Scheller right now is also the chairman of the board for 2 years. So taking into account that Mr. Marishi is member of the board, we are very grateful as board to be here in this wonderful country in India, and I think it's a great opportunity for us to be with you. My name is Christian Edelmann. I'm the Deputy Director of External Audit, and with me is my colleague Karen Claiborne. She's the team leader for UNCCD, and we will be also available tomorrow for further questions at the budget contact group. So this gives you the opportunity to ask questions also in detail. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to point out that this is the first time that the Board of Auditors is presenting its findings to you, to the COP. And I think this is an excellent opportunity for both sides to have more transparency in this field of financial accounts and on the money side of your organization. If you would have asked me maybe 5 years ago how relevant UNCCD is for the general German citizen, I think my answer would be quite negative. But if you would have the same question this year, I think the situation has completely changed. Even in my country, the situation of drought is becoming more and more severe also in northern countries. So I think your work and the work of UNCCD is very important and should be more in the focus than it might be. So having said this, I would really like to give a little bit insight on the organization and inform you a little bit about the more or less dry figures. But right to the beginning, I would like to point out that the board has given your organization, UNCCD, an unqualified opinion for the last 2 years, which means in the language of the auditors, the accounts are fine. I think this is a very important information for you, for the stakeholders, and for the organization that you got this unqualified opinion. The overall situation of the organization is quite positive. You have an accumulated surplus of $1.6 million and fund balances and reserves of $11.3 million, which is quite a good situation. But you also have to take into account that voluntary contributions are usually earmarked. This means that their use is limited to a specific purpose, which is some obstacle sometimes for the organization itself. I also would like to point out that the Secretariat has pursued its effort to implement previous year's recommendations of the board. This is a very important indicator for us. The board noted that out of a total of 16 recommendations in 2018, which were pending, 8 had been implemented, 7 were under implementation, and 1 was overtaken by events. I have also to say that the implementation rate has a little bit decreased compared to the previous years. As you might know, the job of an auditor is to be critical. So after this positive introduction, I would like to shed a little bit light on the findings we had in certain areas. And I would like to stress certain specific aspects. All our reports are published on our website, so if you are interested, you can go into detail. The first area I would like to cover is outstanding indicative contributions. The board noted that for the first year of the biennium 2018-2019, only 85% of indicative contributions were received in 2018. Over the last years, the nominal of outstanding contribution increased to almost 1/4 of the total yearly indicative contributions. The board also noted the continuous growth of impaired indicative contributions. And to be very frank, we are concerned that this could affect the financial sustainability of the Secretariat in the long run, so that's something where I think you should be aware of. On the other side, I mean, we as board have to appreciate the various steps taken by UNCCD to remind the parties frequently of outstanding contributions. Another topic I would like to present to you is the funding of employee benefits liabilities. This is also a risk area for us as auditors. The liabilities for the after-service health insurance, you might know the term ASHIs, amount to about $14 million, and for the repatriation grants to $1.2 million. And it has to be pointed out that until 2016, they have not been funded at all. So there's some progress. I also have to say that this is a situation which is not unique to UNCCD. You find it at various UN organizations. And it's quite a good step that as of 2017, UNCCD has started funding these liabilities from voluntary contributions. The amount UNCCD has secured is 0.2 million, so this is basically a first step. It also has to be pointed out that for staff financed from indicative contribution, no funding has started yet. The board also noted that the COP as a governing body neither decided on the funding for staff finance from indicative contributions nor on funding for the staff finance from voluntary contributions. The board further noted that the disclosure on the funding in the financial statements was not sufficient to obtain a clear decision-making basis for the management and the parties. And as I said before, transparency, that's one of the key issues for you and also for the auditor, so that's one of the points we would like to stress. I would like now to come a little bit more into detail to findings we presented in our 2018 report. One area was program support costs. Program support costs are generally charged on all projects to recover indirect costs. In general, you have 13% of those project costs. We noted projects that derive from this handling. UNC concluded agreements with lower or even no program support charge, and the reasons for the deviation from the general handling were not documented or justified. I think that's something which is quite important because, costs have to be covered. The next areas I would like to touch upon is program and budget. The UNCCD program and budget proposal for 2018-2019 consists of 2 documents. One document contained the proposed core budget, another document presented the multi-year work plan and the 2-year costed work program. The core budget was divided into objects of expenditure such as staff, consultants, general operating expenses, and joint administration costs. The multi-year program plan defines strategic objectives, main outcomes, outcome indicators, and main outputs. The board holds that the separate documents with different tables make it difficult to understand budget allocation. In addition to that, the budget lines deviate from the breakdown of the expenses in the financial statements. This might sound very technical to you, but I think coming back to the core issue of transparency, budget documents should be drafted in a way that it's easy for the stakeholders to understand and gives you help to read financial statements, because financial statements in general are not really exciting stories, so I think they should be presented in a way easy to understand and to follow. I would like now to come to the Umoja roles. You might know Umoja is one of the key instruments throughout the UN. It's an SAP system which we think as Board of Auditors is a core instrument for the work of every UN organization. And Umoja users are assigned a role or combination of roles in order to carry out their functions. Certain combination of roles should be avoided to comply with the requirements for segregation of duty, which is one of the core issues for monitoring an organization. I have to point out that we found cases where combination of roles for Umoja users of UNCCD violated those segregation of duty requirements, and this could lead to certain risk and errors. So that's a technical point, but taking into account the crucial role of Umoja, I think it's quite an important one. I also would like to stress a little bit the discussion on institutional linkage. You might know that in 1998, the United Nations Secretariat and UNCCD signed on an arrangement for administrative support. The COP and the General Assembly regularly reaffirmed the continuation of the administrative arrangement and the connected institutional linkage. When our audit team checked those arrangements, we found that the actual situation differed from the original arrangement. And furthermore, in our opinion, the status of UNCCD in the United Nations system is not clearly defined. We think further that the Secretariat should review the administrative services provided by other United Nations entities, the price list of service providers, and its own structure, with the aim to propose the revision of the administrative arrangement and the institutional linkage. We know as Board of Auditors this is a touchy subject. Nevertheless, we see our role in pointing out that there is room for improvement. This might be a procedure which takes a while, but nevertheless, I think some work has to be done, and we would like to address this to you. Finally, I would give you some idea and some information concerning our findings of the year 2017. One area covers agreements with partners. The board noted some weaknesses in managing arrangements with partners. For example, UNCCD did not use a standardized template, and the structure and main conditions varied from one contract to the other. We also found out that UNCCD did not use a comprehensive monitoring system to monitor the agreements. I also would like to address the subject of anti-fraud and anti-corruption measures. This is a subject throughout the UN, one of the standard points we as Board of Auditors address in all of our reports. UNCCD has undertaken various efforts to implement an anti-fraud culture, which is very good. But we also found that no systematic fraud risk assessment was in place. UNCCD had not fully implemented the measures listed in the anti-fraud and anti-corruption framework, so there is some room for improvement. And to sum up, as you can see, what's important, unqualified opinion. Nevertheless, there are certain areas where there is room for improvement. The board made a number of recommendations aiming to improve the governance and the financial management of this organization. And I think that's the role or the way we see ourselves. We would like to help the organization to become better. We do not want to finger point, but our role is to have a transparent view and give recommendations which help everyone to become better. Before I conclude my statement, on behalf of the board, I would really like to thank the Secretariat and the staff for their support and their excellent cooperation. For us, it was always a pleasure to work with the Secretariat. It's a very professional staff, and it's really, really positive working atmosphere. And for the German Supreme Audit Institution, it's an honor to serve UNCCD and the objectives of this organization. And as I said in the very beginning, the topic of desert is a topic for all of us, and in this spirit we would like to support the work of the organization in the next 3 years to come. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I thank the representative of the United Nations Board of Auditors for his statement. Are there any delegations wishing to make a statement in connection with the reports that were just introduced? If so, I'd like to ask you to please use the button on your microphone so that it could be displayed, those of you who wish to make a statement. We have just concluded the general discussions of the sub-item 6B. Distinguished delegates, I now invite the committee to begin its consideration of Agenda Item 6, Sub-Item C, entitled Report of the Evaluation Office, for which you have before you document UNCCDCOP14/12. I give the floor to the representative of the UNCCD Secretariat, Ms. Satu Ralvo, to introduce the report.
Thank you, sir, and good morning, distinguished delegates. The UNCCD Secretariat and the Global Mechanism are requested to regularly evaluate their activities by the United Nations through regulations and rules governing program aspects of the budget, and also in line with the standard procedures of many donors. Accordingly, since 2014, selected activities concerning the Secretariat and the GM have been systematically evaluated by independent experts, and the evaluation reports have been made available to the parties through the UNCCD website. They are presented also to the COP under this sub-agenda item on the program and budget. The aim of the UNCCD evaluations is primarily to support internal learning of the Secretariat and the GM for improved effectiveness and efficiency. The evaluations are an important part of managing by results. They also seek to contribute to the transparency of work carried out under the UNCCD and to the accountability of the Secretariat and the GM. Since the last session of the COP, 4 evaluations or assessments were completed and 2 more are still underway. The completed evaluations are about the Global Land Outlook, the GLOW, cooperation between the World Overview of Conservation Approaches and Technologies, usually known as WOCAT, and the UNCCD Secretariat, the Land Degradation Target Setting Program, and legal instruments that could be considered for addressing drought under the UNCCD. You will find the full evaluation reports together with the management responses on the UNCCD website under the section on the Evaluation Office. At the moment, we are working on 2 evaluations that will be completed soon. One of them is about the UNCCD regional coordination units, and the other one is about the project managed by the Global Mechanism known as FLEV, which is part of the Great Green Wall of Africa initiative. Let me now introduce to you the proposed work program of the Evaluation Office for the next 2 years. This proposed program may be adjusted in the light of other tasks or further evaluation or assessment requirements assigned by this COP. The following evaluations are planned to be carried out. Evaluation of the UNCCD Gender Action Plan, evaluation of the Drought Initiative, evaluation of private sector engagement in the UNCCD, evaluation of the support for the preparation of transformative projects, evaluation of cooperation with the International Institute for Sustainable Development, evaluation of the New York Liaison Office, and evaluation of the UNCCD conference services. On this last one, I would like to also inform you that we will be distributing to all delegations survey forms concerning conference arrangements at the end of the CST and also close to the end of the COP. These will be very brief forms. They will not take much of your time, but your answers will be very important material for us for considering how to improve our services to you. I hope that you will all accept to participate in this survey. I would like to conclude by thanking those many focal points and national officials, scientific experts, civil society members, representatives of different organizations, and all others who have devoted their time to the interviews and surveys that were conducted during the evaluations. We have approached hundreds of you to get your feedback. This direct feedback from different stakeholders was critically important information for all evaluations. And we hope that we can continue counting on your support also in the future. Thank you for your attention.
I thank the representative of the UNCCD Secretariat for her statement. Are there any delegations wishing to make a statement in connection with the report that was just introduced? Who is it? I give the floor to the representative of Fiji.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry, it's Finland on behalf of the European Union and its member states. So, Chair, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I am speaking on behalf of the European Union and its member states, and I wish to address all the three sub-items. The EU and its member states thank the Secretariat for the preparation of notes on the comprehensive multi-year work plan for the Convention for years 2020-2023 and two-year co-stage work program for the Convention for years 2020-21. The EU and its member states appreciates the work of the Secretariat in preparing the two budget scenarios in line with the last COP decision on the budget. The EU is looking forward to the upcoming deliberations and stands ready to contribute constructively to the negotiations based on the Secretariat's note. The EU appreciates the linkages of the main outputs of the multi-year work plan to the UNCCD strategic objectives and welcomes especially the reference to LDN and its integration into the SDGs through Target 15.3. In this respect, we are pleased to see that the volume of domestic and international resources to address the land degradation is increasing. The EU and its member states, as the biggest donors, play a significant role in this regard. The EU also welcomes with satisfaction that LDN Fund has attracted commitments of more than $100 million by 2019. Which enables efficient work in relation to land restoration. This improves and supports land-based job creation and income generation. The EU in general supports the focus of the two-year work program on activities to overcome the technical, regulatory and social barriers of restoring recreated land. We are pleased to note that the GM will strengthen the partnerships established with the IUCN and UN Women. The EU also supports the effective work of the trust funds as a means to implement effectively the work programs of the different bodies of the UNCCD. We equally support the UNCCD Evaluation Office's independent work as an important mechanism in developing and improving the activities of the UNCCD. I thank you for your attention.
I thank the distinguished representative of Finland on behalf of the European Union. Are there any other delegations wishing to speak to this matter? There being none, I give the floor to the representative of the Secretariat to respond.
Thank you, sir. We simply thank you for your attention and look forward to discussing further these issues in the context of the budget contact group. Thank you.
I thank the representative of the UNCCD Secretariat for her response. Distinguished delegates, we have just heard the last speaker on the list, and the only speaker on the list for that matter, on this discussion. And with that, we have concluded the agenda item 6. Distinguished delegates, I now invite the committee to begin its consideration of agenda item 2, entitled 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, Implications for the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, sub-item A, Integration Sustainable Development Goal 15, and Target 15.3 into the implementation of the United Nations Convention to combat desertification and land degradation neutrality. Under this sub-item, the committee has before it a report by the Executive Secretary contained in document ICCD/COP14/2. I give the floor to the representative of the UNCCD Secretariat, Mr. Sasha Alexander, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. Document ICCD COP14/2 provides a summary of the efforts of the Secretariat and the Global Mechanism to support countries in the integration of SDG 15 and related Target 15.3 into the implementation of the Convention. The document also outlines some recommendations on future work priorities and collaborations for implementing and monitoring progress toward SDG Target 15.3, as requested in Decision 3, COP13. In that decision, the COP invited parties to formulate voluntary targets to achieve land degradation neutrality, LDN, and to use the monitoring and evaluation approach adopted in Decision 22, COP11, to monitor, evaluate, and communicate progress towards achieving the LDN targets. Furthermore, in Decision 7, COP13, the COP adopted the UNCCD 2018-2030 Strategic Framework with a vision of a future that avoids, minimizes, and reverses desertification and land degradation and mitigates the effects of drought in affected areas at all levels, and strives to achieve a land degradation neutral world consistent with the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development within the scope of the Convention. In accordance with the UNCCD Strategic Framework, and by leveraging partnerships to support efforts to achieve LDN, parties have and are taking decisive action to integrate SDG 15 and related Target 15.3 in implementing the Convention. As regards to the Secretariat and GM efforts to assist country parties in this regard, we would like to highlight a few milestones contained in the document. 1. The GM and the Secretariat, in collaboration with 18 international partners, delivered comprehensive support to countries that committed to setting their voluntary LDN targets. As of May 2019, 122 countries are participating in the LDN target setting program. 2. The LDN Transformative Projects and Programs continues to support country parties in translating the technical and planning work undertaken as part of the LDN target setting into the development of LDN implementation activities on the ground. And 3. The Secretariat continues to engage with the activities of the high-level political forum and related processes in advancing the role of land in advancing sustainable development, including the submission of storylines and data for the Secretary General's report on progress towards the SDGs and the annual SDG report to the forum. This document summarizes the main achievements and support provided by the Secretariat, the Global Mechanism, and UNCCD bodies, and outlines some recommendations on future work priorities and collaborations for implementing and monitoring progress towards SDG Target 15.3, as requested in Decision 3, COP13. Thank you.
I thank the representative of the UNCCD Secretariat for his statement. Are there any delegations wishing to make a statement in connection with the report that was just introduced? Yeah. Eswatini, the delegate from Eswatini, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ladies and gentlemen, let me, first of all, as I'm taking the floor for the first time, thank the people, the government of the Republic of India for hosting us in this nice environment. And we are happy and pleased of all the support that they've provided us since we arrived here, and we are still happy. We thank you so much. And also thank the Secretariat for organizing this conference in such a professional manner. And then finally, let me thank the Secretariat for presenting this document, which is very key and the nerve center of this convention in these days. Mr. Chair, I take this floor on behalf of the African group of countries on this subject matter, where we appreciate the progress made by the Secretariat and the global mechanism under this subject matter, which is work that is based on decisions adopted at COP13, where a number of initiatives have been implemented, which include support to countries working on the land degradation neutrality target setting, development of LDN transformative program and projects, progress made on the land degradation neutrality fund, partnership with multilateral fundings and others like the Changwan initiative and greening of drylands. We see these initiatives, all of them are in support towards achieving target 15.3 of the Sustainable Development Goals and the overall objectives of the UNCCD. Having said that, Mr. Chair, the group is concerned about the rate of support or rate of progress in the development of transformative projects and programs for achieving these targets. In the opening statement of the COP, the chairman of the African group did raise that 50 countries out of 54 African countries have completed their target setting process. This shows that as the African group, we see the LDN process as the nerve center, the backbone for us towards achieving the land degradation neutrality and the overall objective of this convention. So we are attaching very big importance to this process. With that, Mr. Chair, we are of the view that it is time that we move from the target setting phase, where most of our countries have completed that phase, to the development of the transformative programs. From the reports, you could see very few countries have been supported to develop the transformative projects. These transformative projects are the ones that will lead to the achievement of the targets. Setting the target is one thing, but achieving them is another. So the transformative programs and projects are the vehicles. But then that's not the end, Mr. Chair. We also need resources to implement those transformative programs. So we'd like to see a situation, Chair, where this COP will give more energy or more power to the global mechanism and the Secretariat to engage vigorously in supporting member states in the development of the transformative program and also in attaching or mobilizing resources for the implementation of those programs, because we believe that this is the best way for us towards achieving the LDN targets. We have heard that there is good progress that is made on the LDN fund. However, we are of the view that there is still some work that needs to be done by the fund itself, to advertise itself, to provide the criteria and the requirement of accessing resources to the fund, especially because this is targeting the private sector. This will allow the private sector to come in and make use of the fund and also invest in land restoration effort. I thank you, Mr. Chair.
I thank the distinguished representative of the Eswatini, and I now invite the representative of Switzerland to take the floor.
Thank you, Chair. As this is the first time I take the floor, I would like to express my gratitude to the government of India and to its people for the organization of this conference and their hospitality. Mr. Chair, please allow me to address not only the agenda item as discussed now, but also to allow me to make some remarks with regard to the program and budget. The multi-year work plan for the convention, and the 2-year costed work program should better reflect the scope of the convention, that is, to combat desertification, land degradation, and mitigate the effects of drought, as well as the UNCCD strategic framework that says to avoid, minimize, and reverse desertification, land degradation, and mitigate the effects of drought in affected areas at all levels, and to strive to achieve a land degradation neutral world. The documents and also our decisions should not only focus on LDN targets, but to address the whole convention. The overall objective of the global mechanism is the mobilization of financial resources to scale up the implementation of the convention and not to scale up the implementation, as stated in para 60. We realize that the global mechanism considers itself as an implementing branch of the convention. That does not correspond with its proper mandate. The evaluation of the LDN TSP clearly came up with the conclusion that the missing financial resources are a major concern for parties. Therefore, the UNCCD Secretariat and especially the GM should act within their respective mandates. To combat desertification and land degradation and mitigating the effects of drought, according to the scientific conceptual framework for LDN that promotes a dual-pronged approach of measures to avoid and reduce degradation of land in combination with measures to reverse past degradation, restoration is one, but not the only approach UNCCD should focus on. Cost efficiency of the different measures to combat DLDD and achieve land degradation neutrality should be taken into consideration. The Science, Technology and Implementation Program will improve reporting tools and processes, promote the sharing of data, information and knowledge aimed at scaling up best practices and further develop the knowledge hub. We believe that WOCAT could play an important role in this endeavor and would like to know from the Secretariat where they see opportunities for this collaboration. With regard to the global land outlook, Switzerland recommends to further clarifying the specific scope and objective of the GLO in order to avoid any potential overlaps with other global assessments as well as the targeted audience. To further enhance the quality and relevance of the report, we support the early identification of possible contributions by other stakeholders, in particular also scientific networks dealing with land issues. Thank you, Chair.
I thank the distinguished representative of Switzerland, and I now invite the distinguished representative of Colombia.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you very much, sir. Given that this is the first time that my country has taken the floor during this plenary session, I would like to convey to the people and the government of the Republic of India our gratitude for the way in which they have hosted us and welcomed us with arms wide open. Chair, distinguished delegates, for Colombia it is an honor to take part in the discussions that will take place at this 14th Conference of the Parties and the meetings of the subsidiary bodies. We hope that over the course of these sessions we will see significant progress in including the Sustainable Development Goals into the implementation of the Convention. Namely, SDG 15, which is promoting the sustainable use of land ecosystems to combat desertification and to revert the degradation of land and to curb the loss of biological diversity loss. So as to attain this goal, we believe that it is of utmost importance to recognize and to include the results of scientific reports on land, their degradation and the Restoration, drafted by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change and the Intergovernmental Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, which highlight the clear link that exists between land, its use, climate change, its mitigation, and the effects that land degradation has on the loss of biodiversity and ecosystem services worldwide. For our country, the role played by science is fundamental in drafting policies that would allow us to improve the conditions of ecosystems and for the populations affected. Now that we have this important scientific information, it is important to act accordingly and to target our finances, our technical assistance, and our capacity building, as well as our technological transfer to attain that end. Sir, the time has come for the convention to become a tool and a platform to contribute viable solutions to important matters that concern the international community, such as climate change, the loss of biodiversity, and ecosystem services, and to do this using land-based solutions. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Colombia, and I now invite the representative of China.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I now speak on behalf of the Chinese delegation. Yesterday, we have had a great opening ceremony. A good opening marks half of our success, and I believe in the following discussions we will make smooth progress. In the following, I will give several comments regarding the agenda item integration of the SDG 15 and related target 15.3 into the implementation of the convention. At a global scope, the UNCCD, as the international body and in charge of the implementation of SDG 15.3, the convention should fully take advantage of this role and becoming a leading body to implement SDG 15.3 and also to enhance development and enhancement of the information progress of various parties. I would like to talk about the following points. Firstly, we wanted to change our strategical thinking and also add more value to our natural endowments. Desertification is a disaster. However, a natural system which has been improved and good governed would be a valuable resources. Like the President Xi of China mentioned, clear water and green mountains are our golden treasures. They do not only generate ecological benefits, but also social and industrial benefits. It can also meet the expectation of the general public for a better quality of living, and also it can become valuable collaterals for the banks and thereby helping us to obtaining valuable financial resources and capitals. Therefore, we need to transform our governance thinking and also to development an industrial model that can generate multi-dimensional benefits. On the other hand, in terms of practice, we need to conduct large-scale governments and enhance the stability of the ecosystem. The practices in China shows that the large-scale governments and systematic governance is an important pathway to address the issue of desertification, land degradation, and drought. The Green Belt in the northern part of China and also the project to address the dust source in the Beijing and Tianjin area are our best practices. And it shows that through changes in quantity can lead to changes in quality. It can enhance the stability of the ecosystem in order to achieve SDG 15.3 and strengthen our results and achievements in the field of the governance of desertification. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I thank the distinguished representative of China, and I now invite the distinguished representative of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, as this is the first time my delegation is taking the floor, allowing me the opportunity to express our delegation's appreciation to India for the wonderful arrangements made for our meeting. I'm also delighted to see you presiding, Mr. Chairman, so please accept our congratulations. Mr. Chairman, I've taken the floor to commend the report that is before us in terms of the integration of the SDG 15 and 15.3 in particular into our work. As preceding delegations have mentioned, it is our firm view that the integration of SDG 15 into the work of the UNCCD in fact represents a very strategic opportunity for the convention. And I say this for several reasons. In particular, it allows us the opportunity to increase the visibility of the convention, to enhance synergies with other related bodies, in particular the other Rio conventions, and perhaps most importantly, to accelerate the implementation or the achievement of the core objectives of our convention. And for this reason, we would like to commend the progress that is made so far, the efforts by the Secretariat and the global mechanism to integrate 15, and we have had a number of successful initiatives so far. The view of the Guyana delegation is that on account of the considerable opportunity that this item presents, we look forward to further discussions on it so that we can discuss with colleagues how we can intensify and scale up support for the initiatives that are already underway. So with these words, really, Mr. Chairman, I thank you very much.
I thank the distinguished representative of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, and I now invite the distinguished representative of the European Union.
Thank you, Chair. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I am honored to deliver this statement on behalf of the EU and its member states. And let me also address the other sub-items. We continue to strongly support the integration of the SDG 15.3 in implementation of the Convention and underline the role that LDN is playing as strategic framework focus. We believe that the UNCCD can and should pursue in serving as a key forum to assess and enhance progress towards the achievement of SDG Target 15.3. Striving to achieve SDG Target 15.3 is a strong vehicle for driving implementation of the Convention. In this regard, the COP invited parties to formulate voluntary targets to achieve LDN and to monitor, evaluate, and communicate progress towards achieving the LDN target. The EU stresses the importance to encourage other relevant agencies and stakeholders to seek cooperation to achieve the SDG 15.3 target, recognizing that LDN offers also relevant opportunities to support food security, human well-being, and climate change adaptation and mitigation. IPCC's special report on climate change and land supports this reality. LDN offers parties an integrated framework to catalyze progress towards addressing LDD at country level and ensure relevant synergies in order to implement other relevant conventions and achieve the objectives of many other fora and agencies with connected goals, adopting a close cooperation approach. Looking at the results of the last reporting cycle, we welcome the significant progress in setting national LDN targets in several country parties. The LDN target setting program is clearly exceeding the original expectations and has created significant momentum for the implementation of the Convention, highlighting also the key role that sustainable land management plays in achieving SDGs. Ladies and gentlemen, the main challenge lies in implementing the ambitious targets set by countries. To this end, we call on the Secretariat and Global Mechanism to take the necessary measures to support countries in translating the LDN targets into concrete bold action and integrating them into relevant policies and budgets. We also encourage parties to further implement and scale up sustainable land management practices and transformative LDN programs. In this respect, we are pleased to see that the volume of domestic and international resources to address land degradation is increasing. The EU and its member states, as the biggest donors, play a significant role in this regard. However, the implementation of LDN is not only a question of designing good projects and fund availability, as it is not only a matter of making more ODA available. It is first of all a question of political will for all countries to address the drivers of land degradation. Governance frameworks need to be in place that enable and encourage sustainable land management. This includes inter alia responsible land tenure systems, effective agricultural advisory services, and access to agricultural finance. Only if farmers know that they will continue to have secured access to their land, they will be willing to invest in long-term sustainable management. Secondly, it is also about developing innovative financing mechanisms and engage with the private sector to mobilize sustainable investments in land and restoration projects that socially and environmentally do no harm. The LDN Fund is a promising initiative, and we would like to receive more information on modes of operation and the initial operations of the fund, including order to already start reflecting on early lessons learned. Ladies and gentlemen, against this background, it is crucial that all relevant stakeholders are involved in the development of LDN strategies and their implementation. This requires a constant collaboration between all concerned ministries as well as interagency cooperation, particularly between those responsible for environmental and agricultural management. Equally important, it is the active involvement of civil society organizations as well as the private sector, including small and medium enterprises. Moreover, synergies should be seized with the commitments under the Paris Agreement and the Convention on Biological Diversity, as well as other efforts towards large-scale land and ecosystems restoration. Integrated approaches to land management should be encouraged, as they help deliver several economic, social, and environmental benefits. Large-scale integrated land restoration initiatives at national and local level, driven by local actors and contributing to the objectives of the Rio Conventions, addressing DLDD, climate change, and the biodiversity crisis, and broader sustainable development objectives are therefore needed. This COP should identify actions to promote a closer collaboration in the implementation of the respective obligations of the UNCCD and the CBD on the ground, and establish how the UNCCD can contribute to the elaboration of the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework to be tabled for adoption at the CBD-COP15 in China in 2020. Ladies and gentlemen, LDN target setting has achieved momentum for the Convention. In order to maintain this momentum, we need to systematically follow up on LDN targets and their implementation. The setting of voluntary targets should not be a one-time exercise but an iterative process, including regular stock takes on targets and their implementations. We welcome the work done so far by the Secretariat to set the modalities, criteria, and terms of reference for the independent midterm evaluation of the strategic framework. We look forward to finalizing them at the 16th session of the COP in 2023, including the composition of the Intergovernmental Working Group. The midterm evaluation should act as a decisive tool for enhancing the process of reaching the 5 strategic objectives of the strategic framework. Moreover, the future recommendations of the midterm evaluation should efficiently guide the work of the UNCCD in supporting the parties to reach the SDG target 15.3 by 2030, in cooperation with other Rio Conventions and relevant UN organizations. Gender equality is an issue which deserves significantly more attention. Therefore, we are pleased that gender is included as a cross-cutting theme in the midterm evaluation. I thank you very much for your attention.
I thank the distinguished representative of the European Union, and I now invite the distinguished representative of the Syrian Arab Republic to take the floor.
Okay. شكرا سيد الرئيس.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Chairman. I should like to start at the outset by conveying my gratitude to the government of India for having hosted this conference. Chairman, the Arab Republic of Syria, the Syrian Arab Republic, is a party to this convention, and we have been so since 1994. And we became a party in 1997. All stakeholders in Syria are working tirelessly to achieve all of our commitments. A great deal of progress has been achieved despite financial difficulties and organizational problems. Our country has made ongoing efforts to achieve the SDGs, including work on land degradation and desertification. A national plan for Syria was adopted this year regarding soil and land degradation. It will run for 2 years and will include the implementation of all post-15 objectives. More specifically, Objective 15.3. Now, the National Plan of Action in Syria on land degradation is highly necessary, but what is most important is the implementation of the content of this program and project, i.e. transformative projects towards more concrete programs for soil, for land, regarding erosion and desertification. Now, after the Syrian Arab Republic adopted this national plan, she has sought to incorporate future United Nations plans within the framework of our national plan for financing and for TPPs, including the governmental program against land degradation in the Syrian Arab Republic. I thank you, sir.
I thank the representative of the Syrian Arab Republic, and I now invite the distinguished representative of the United States to take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, colleagues. Since this is the first time my delegation is taking the floor, we would like to take this opportunity to thank the government of India for hosting us in this beautiful place. We always appreciate the warmth of the people of India. I think it's matched only by the warmth of the temperature outside, maybe, but we're glad to be here. Thank you also to the Secretariat for the preparation of this document. I think we would agree with others around the hall that land degradation neutrality efforts can be a really useful tool for us in this convention. We would agree that it's helpful for raising visibility of the convention and its work, for resource mobilization, and for strengthening political will. And these are all important items. We welcome this tool being used by parties who are taking on targets. We really appreciate their efforts in this regard. We wanted to take the opportunity of this agenda item to make a broader comment. Well, this document, of course, is appropriately focused solely on LDN. We noted that many documents across the breadth of the meeting likewise are very heavily focused on LDN. And we would agree with Switzerland and others that spoke before us that we don't want to forget that this is the focus of our convention is a bit broader. We are not the UN Convention to Combat Land Degradation Neutrality. We're the Convention to Combat Desertification. And our strategic plan and other guiding documents focus more broadly on DLDD. And we do think it's really important to work on this broader elements of avoid, maintain, and restore, and not forget that they're there and that they are also really important elements of our work under the convention. So we'll be looking across the decision text when we see the drafts to be sure that there's good balance. From some of the preparatory materials we've seen, it's easy to forget that there are other things, drought and other important pieces that we're all working on here. So we fully support the work of colleagues who are working on their LDN targets. We would agree that political will be a really important piece of this, and we're really glad to see so many pilot efforts underway and planned for and hoped for. As we said, we think that's all really fantastic work, but we want to remind ourselves that we have strategic plans, we have other things, and we don't want to lose the whole breadth of DLDD work as we go forward through this COP. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
I thank the distinguished representative of the United States, and I now invite the distinguished representative of Belarus to take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. We highly appreciate the efforts of the Secretariat, the Global Mechanism, and other international partners in supporting countries in the LDN target setting program and the LDN transformative projects and programs development. Belarus expressed its commitment to the LDN idea through the government decision, namely in the strategy of implementation of the UNCCD. The voluntary national LDN targets are approved and correspond to nationally determined contributions to climate change and national targets to achieve biodiversity goals, and as a principle of synergy lies in the basis of achieving national LDN targets in Belarus. We would like to separately emphasize one of our national LDN targets relating to the restoration of peatlands. In Belarus, the area of peatlands is about 2.4 million hectares, or more than 11% of the country's territory. Of this amount, more than one-third was preserved in its natural state. Most of them have the status of protected areas, but also we have a lot of degraded peatlands. To date, Belarus restored tens of thousands of hectares of degraded peatlands by revetting, and we set the ambitious target to restore of degraded peatlands by 2030. In this regard, we would like to express our gratitude to the Secretariat, UNEP, and the Government of the Republic of Korea for support in the implementation of the project Restoration of Drained Peatlands in Belarus, within the framework of which more than 1,000 hectares of degraded peatlands were restored in areas subject to radioactive contamination. This made it possible to achieve a synergetic effect, to restore degraded lands, prevent carbon emissions from these territories, create conditions for increasing biodiversity, as well as reduce the risk of fires and thus prevent the transfer of radionuclides. IPCC, on its last report, recognized peatlands as a unique ecosystem which has potential to continue sequestering a carbon for centuries. CRIC 17, on its recommendations, mentioned peatlands as one of the focus areas due to their high carbon potential. United Nations Environmental Assembly, in its fourth session on March 2019, adopted Resolution 4/16 on conservation and sustainable management of peatlands. On the basis of the above, Belarus strongly supports the need to stimulate of synergies at the global and national level, and would like to emphasize in the decision of COP14 the importance of restoration peatlands as activities that can provide multilateral benefits and promote the achievement as target 15.3.1 as other SDGs, and to call global mechanism and international partners to support countries in their efforts on restoration degraded peatlands, as well as conservation and sustainable management of peatlands. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of the Belarus, and I now invite the distinguished representative of Egypt to take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, as I take the floor for the first time in this meeting, allow me to thank you and thank the government and people of India for their generous hospitality in this beautiful city of New Delhi. It is also my honor to express my heartfelt appreciation to Mr. Diao and to congratulate him for his election chair of this session. We express our willingness to constructively cooperate with the Secretariat, and we wish you all success. Mr. President, we would like to thank you for the submission of this very important report on the implementation of Goal 15.3 on LDN and the integration of LDN in Sustainable Development Goals. I also would like to draw your attention to the fact that Egypt has adopted the integration of LDN in its State Strategy 2030. And there is strong will expressed by the state of Egypt at the national level to promote sustainable developments, including Goal 15.3 on LDN. Egypt has also encouraged and supported the private sector on its efforts on LDN. And we hope that financial resources will be available for the parties in order to carry out their LDN national projects. I would like to agree with the representative of Swatini who spoke on this. In the end, I would like to thank you all. Thank you.
Of Egypt, and I now invite the distinguished representative of Brazil to take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, as our first intervention here, I would like to thank the Indian government for the great arrangements that are being provided, and while also subscribing to the statement made in the opening by the Latin American and Caribbean Regional Group. I would also like to express our support to different interventions made by delegations that are emphasizing the need to remember the complete mandate of UNCCD and the understanding of land degradation neutrality as an important instrument, as a means to achieve the greater mandate, the original mandate of the Convention. And in this regard, emphasize the importance of actually developing tools with regards to drought throughout these documents. Drought remains a very present challenge, a very widespread and increasing challenge to the livelihoods of millions and billions of people, and demands a specific consideration in this regard. While land degradation neutrality will encompass this challenge, it in many regards does not provide the best visibility and the necessary emphasis that this challenge is posing to agriculture and to food security in the planet. So thank you for this opportunity.
I thank the distinguished representative of Brazil. And now I give the floor to the representative of the Secretariat to respond to the questions and comments. Oh, sorry. The distinguished representative of the Republic of Korea. You have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, on behalf of the government of the Republic of Korea, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the government and people of India for having the UNCCD COP14 and their warm welcome and hospitality. Also, I would like to express my thank you to the UNCCD Secretariat for their support and preparation for this conference. The Republic of Korea has provided extensive support for the wide range of UNCCD activity through the Changwon Initiative, which started from 2011 at the UNCCD COP10. Changwon Initiative has 4 major programs. First one is LDN targeting, and second one is greening dryland partnership. And the third one is Global Land Outlook Report, and the fourth one is Land and Life Award. For the past 2 years, the Republic of Korea has endeavored to strengthen the implementation of LDN target setting through the Changwon Initiative. The Korean government has provided continued support for the LDN target setting program, and it is currently supporting the LDN transformative project and program. The Republic of Korea has also built further partnership through the Greening Dryland Partnership and other cooperative projects. Now that the Greening Dryland Partnership has supported 13 countries in Africa and Asia. Also, the Republic of Korea held the first global LDN forum in Seoul in July 2018. Furthermore, we closely collaborated with our neighboring countries in Northeastern Asia, including China, Mongolia, and Russia, in order to foster regional cooperation in combating desertification, land degradation, and drought, as well as sand and dust storm in this region. In addition, noting the importance of drought issue, the Republic of Korea has started supporting a South African drought initiative from this year. Mr. Chair, the Republic of Korea believes that in order to effectively integrate sustainable development goal 15 and target 15.3 into the convention, we need to develop diverse partnership. In this regard, the Republic of Korea will launch a new global initiative titled the Peace Forest Initiative at this COP. The initiative is aimed at promoting peace and trust through collaboration between neighboring countries and different races and tribes in sustainable land development, sustainable land management, and LDN. We hope this Peace Forest Initiative will give additional moment to the implementation of LDN and the Convention. In this regard, we will have the special high-level segment luncheon meeting, which will be held the next week, September 10th, Tuesday, 1300. Please, all of the head of the delegation take part in this special high-level luncheon meeting. This initiative can also make a meaningful contribution to the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration, which will be starting from the 2021. We sincerely hope we can work together with all of the country parties in this endeavor. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I thank the distinguished representative of the Republic of Korea, and I now invite the distinguished representative of Kenya.
Thank you, Chair. Kenya takes this opportunity to thank the government of India and its people for their warm and very warm hospitality and acceptance to host the conference of the parties of the 14th session of UNCCD. Secondly, allow me, Chair, to congratulate you, Mr. President, on your election. Kenya notes the importance of implementing the Sustainable Development Goals, in particular Goal 15, targets, and 15.3 towards combating desertification, restoring degraded lands and soils, including lands affected by desertification, droughts, and floods, and striving to achieve a land degradation neutrality world. In Kenya, land degradation neutrality targets have been set at national level with ambitions to reach land degradation neutrality for the entire country, taking into account all land degradation neutrality indicators: land use and land use cover, land productivity, and soil organic carbon. Further, it's worth noting that these efforts have been cascaded to county governments, what other countries would call regional governments, for implementation and budget allocation. The Ministry of Environment and Forestry will continue to strengthen its coordination role to meet national reporting obligation for multilateral environment agreements. Thank you, sir.
I thank the distinguished representative of Kenya, and I now invite the distinguished representative of Saudi Arabia.
Shukran, Sayyid. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Allow me at first to thank the Indian government for hosting this conference. I also would like to thank the Executive Secretary and his team for the good preparation of the documents of this meeting. I do agree with a number of delegates who expressed the importance of focusing on a worldwide perspective of land degradation while focusing on drought, because this is an international challenge. We do appreciate all efforts to combat drought. However, not enough importance has been allocated to this subject over the last years, and we do insist on the importance of addressing drought. As for the draft budget, we hope that this budget will be extensively discussed by the working group, and I hope that a number of points will be explained to the delegates. In conclusion, we express our full support so that we adopt decisions to combat desertification and to implement all NDN programs. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Saudi Arabia, and I now invite the distinguished representative of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela to take the floor.
Yes. Okay. Okay. No, pero yo, ¿qué?
Buenos días.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Chair. This is the first time that my delegation has taken the floor. And for that reason, we would like to begin by conveying our gratitude to the government of India for the efforts and the goodwill that has been displayed so far. We would also like to express our gratitude to the Secretariat for the very interesting report that they have provided us with, which has allowed us to have a all-embracing view of the global position to be had on the matter. The Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela has taken on a national strategy for neutrality of land and to combat drought, and we have done this with a great deal of interest and energy. And since last year, we have been a member of the program, and here we would like to thank Mr. Pedro Lara, who has provided enough support and information to us And for Venezuela, the whole idea has been very interesting, and we have managed to integrate various institutions responsible of this, such as the National Venezuelan Association for Soils, which is part of the National Alliance for Soils, through the FAO, and they have provided a great deal of support in monitoring carbon emissions, and we hope that this will be a successful national experience. Also, with land productivity, we have managed to increase our knowledge, and we hope we will be able to contribute with some innovations, given that we have the National Venezuelan Institute of Innovation, which has started considering land productivity as a main focus. We also have our position within the GRULAC. We are aligned with the GRULAC, and we look forward to continue to contributing on this. I would like to say that the date of combat decertification, 17th of June, was a very important date for us, for it was then that we presented our national neutrality goals. And we have already signed on to the high-level note, and we are looking forward to beginning our transforming projects, given that we have large water basin areas that need to be further developed to address land degradation and erosion. For that reason, we believe that this program will bring us closer to the communities, and we will make sure to include the gender approach as well. There is a ministry in our country which is providing us all the gender-specific information to make sure that the project is aimed at them. We're also strengthening the National Action Program. For Venezuela, the National Action Program is a political position paper. It will prove to be most useful in the area of finding strategies to combat droughts and to include gender in the National Action Program. Thank you very much, sir.
I thank the representative of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, and I now invite the representative of civil society to take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for providing me the opportunity to speak on behalf of the civil society organizations accredited to the UNCCD and engage in the implementation of the Convention. Civil society organizations highly appreciate the information submitted by country parties on strategic objectives of the UNCCD 2018-2030 strategic framework. Based on synthesis and preliminary analysis of information submitted by country parties, civil society organizations agree with many conclusions and recommendations. At the same time, we would like to highlight the role of civil society organizations and communities in contribution to improving the situation at the local and national level by taking into consideration our proposal to be incorporated in the CAO recommendations for COP14 decisions. Civil society organizations have a crucial role in making bridge between main stakeholders and facilitate the synergies among different frameworks through actions and initiatives we develop on the LDN and other frameworks such as UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, CBD, and even on disaster risk reduction for sustainable development. Thus, for an effective contribution of civil society organizations to reach these strategic objectives, we recommend to build capacities to facilitate the reporting from all stakeholders, particularly from civil society organizations, local and indigenous people who develop and implement various LDN initiatives in the field, made more accessible reporting procedures and systems to the main stakeholders, particularly civil society. The need to have a community of practice bringing together scientists, governmental representatives, civil society organizations, practitioners, farmers, pastoralists, local communities, etc. Then, the evidence and knowledge generated on LDN should be beneficial for communities to allow them to cope with drought, to combat desertification and increase their resilience. Important to explore, besides climate finance, other main sources of finance dealing with land, ecosystems, and community resilience. Thank you very much for your attention.
I thank the representative of civil society. Argentina, do you wish to take the floor? Good. You have the floor, Argentina. It's not working.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. For my delegation as well, this is the first time that we have taken the floor. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank both the government and the people of India for the warm welcome that they have given us, something that all delegations have commented on. Turning to the matter at hand, I would like to say that an intelligent design and implementation of Target 15.3 of the Sustainable Development Goals would allow us to simultaneously tackle the remaining 16 goals and 168 complementary targets, as indicated in the document under Section 4.19. So, to making progress in land neutrality would allow us to address the mitigation of hunger and poverty, health and well-being, gender equality, preservation of water resources, access to sustainable energy, sustainable cities and communities, businesses and infrastructure, decent work, land ecosystems, climate action, and sustainable production and consumption. With this in mind, Argentina has a similar concern to that expressed by the Swiss Confederation in the United States and perhaps a handful of other delegations as well. And that concern is about keeping the focus. And by this I mean that to tackle land degradation has such a broad synergic scope, including all the items that I mentioned a moment ago and other sustainable development targets, that we have to be very smart when designing the policies, because we might run the risk of getting lost in the sheer number of targets and measures that we want to simultaneously tackle. And it is for that reason that we wanted to speak about the role played by various national mechanisms, the ones that involve national and local bureaucracies, and that relate to what we have agreed to multilaterally, and to come to an understanding on how the multilateral agreed rules are to be implemented at the national level. I also wanted to point out how important it is for Argentina to address droughts. Estimates are that for the past decade, there have been losses of approximately $20 billion for Argentina because of the droughts. Now, this obviously has economic implications for us, but these implications then affect other countries as well, given that Argentina is a key link in the food security chain, providing nutrition for approximately 10 times the population of Argentina. It is for that reason that I wanted to say how important it is for each state to adapt what we have agreed to multilaterally to each country. And to conclude, I would like to say that land degradation and desertification and the other problems that we are considering, such as droughts, are exacerbated by climate change, and particularly in my country, and perhaps this is true too in other countries as well. But in Argentina, in some sub-regions, we need to adapt ourselves for combined scenarios where there might be both droughts and floods. You see, there have been times where one year one region has floods and there are loss of harvests, and then immediately the next year there was a strong drought. Thank you, Chairman.
I thank the representative of Argentina for his statement. Delegates, distinguished delegates, I now give the floor to, since that was the last statement from the parties, I now give the floor to the Secretariat to respond to the questions and comments from the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I will make my comments as focused as possible, bearing in mind that some of the matters raised, which are more directly related to the activities of the global mechanism, will also be introduced tomorrow during the CREEC session. We heard a lot of comments regarding the role that we will play in supporting countries in the implementation of LDN through the transformative projects and program. This is an initiative in which we stand ready to accelerate its implementation as per your guidance. We always stay very close or follow very closely your decisions on these areas and ensure that we always operate within our mandate of resource mobilization. Resource mobilization encompasses several areas, and some of it includes the ability or supporting countries to make sure that they have the ability to absorb resources, that they have the ability to prepare good quality programs, and that they can do this in a way that enhances the effectiveness and efficiency of use of resources. I think in this process, and some of the distinguished delegates mentioned, the role that science plays is critical to make sure projects have a strong foundation based on scientific considerations, and that we also help countries incorporate lessons learned and approaches that have been identified by previous initiatives. And here I mentioned, for example, the key role that databases and initiatives such as WOCAT or lessons learned from other countries such as what the People's Republic of China has done can play. We also heard some questions regarding the LDN fund, which from our perspective we see as one of the many financing mechanisms that we are helping develop to facilitate implementation of the convention. As we mentioned in the document, the LDN has become operational. As you know, as per your decision at COP12, this is an independent fund. But having said that, we have played a critical role to ensure that concepts such as LDN are a key component of its investment criteria. And the global mechanism also can assist countries, or more specifically the private sector, in establishing the necessary linkages to make sure that they can have access to resources from the fund. Regarding the ensuring that we are serving all parties in all elements of the convention, I just would like to restate that our mandate as well as our range of activities certainly go beyond the important issue of LDN. As we will discuss in more detail tomorrow, there are other areas such as drought where we are actively engaging in assisting countries, and we look forward to your guidance on how to take that work forward. There were some questions about how the LDN concept is being embedded into national processes, as well as other elements of what one may describe as the land finance ecosystem. I think from that perspective, during the process of voluntary target setting, one of the key elements of that process was not just to come to the targets, but also to have a very broad range of discussions with other national stakeholders to make sure that that we can assist countries in embedding this into a broader set of national processes and policies. Regarding the topic of the regular stock taking on the voluntary targets, this is certainly something that we will be doing in the context of the reporting process, very likely, but upon countries' request, this is also something that we are helping embed within the monitoring and evaluation framework of transformative projects and programs to make sure that individual projects do contribute, and there's a clear line of sight between the results achieved from individual projects and the overall targets. If I may add, there were some other questions on the issues related to resource mobilization activities, and I think one thing that I would like to point out that has been raised is that one element that we do to facilitate that process is not only to assist countries, but also to make the connection with the funding agencies, being it them bilateral, multilateral, or a mechanism, the JEF. We have worked very closely with many of those agencies to ensure that there's a clear understanding of the LDN concept and what it does, not only for this convention, but to achieve the synergies of the 3 Rio conventions, thus increasing impact as well as efficiency use of resources. On this, Mr. Chairman, I hope I cover all the topics raised.
Distinguished delegates, we have just heard the last speaker on the list and the reaction from the Secretariat, and have thus concluded the general discussions on the agenda item 2A. I now invite the committee to begin its consideration of sub-item 2, entitled Modalities, Criteria, and Terms of Reference for a Midterm Evaluation of the UNCCD 2018-2030 Strategic Framework, which it has before it a note by the Secretariat contained in the document, ICCD/COP14/3. I now give the floor to the representative of UNCCD Secretariat, Ms. Satu Ravola, to introduce the report.
Thank you, sir. And I think that now it's fine to say good afternoon, distinguished delegates. By Decision 7, COP13, the Conference of the Parties adopted the UNCCD 2018-2030 Strategic Framework and encouraged parties to apply this strategic framework in their policies, programs, plans, and processes that relate to desertification, land degradation, and drought. By Decision 13, COP13, concerning the terms of reference of the CRIC, the COP further decided that its bureau is to prepare appropriate modalities, criteria, and terms of reference for a midterm evaluation of the strategic framework. This decision also indicated that these modalities, criteria, and terms of reference prepared by the Bureau were to be adopted at this 14th session of the COP. At its second intersessional meeting in February 2019, the COP Bureau considered the COP decision, building on elements that the Secretariat provided for its consideration. A draft COP document was prepared on the basis of the exchanges at the Bureau meeting, and it received final comments from the Bureau members in May 2019. The resulting proposal for the modalities, criteria, and terms of reference for the midterm evaluation of the UNCCD 2018-2030 strategic framework is indeed contained in document UNCCDCOP14/3. It outlines the objectives, the scope, criteria, modalities, and schedule for the evaluation. The midpoint of the 2018-2030 strategic framework is in 2024. And therefore, the Bureau suggests that the midterm evaluation is completed by COP17 in 2025. With this schedule in mind, the document proposes that this COP14 only provisionally adopts the modalities, criteria, and terms of reference for the midterm evaluation as presented in the document. These matters would be considered further and eventually completed by COP16 in 2023. Thank you for your attention.
I thank the representative of UNCCD Secretariat for our statement. Are there any delegations wishing to make a statement in connection with this report that was just introduced? I recognize the distinguished delegate from Ukraine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As this is the first time when I'm taking the floor, I would like to thank the people and the government of Republic of India for hosting COP14 in beautiful city, New Delhi, and their warm hospitality. I also would like to thank the Secretariat and the COP Bureau for preparing these proposals on midterm evaluation. Midterm evaluation is a very important step to assess the progress in implementing the UNCCD strategic framework, its relevance and effectiveness. I would like to support the proposal to establish the Intergovernmental Working Group consisting of representatives of all regions. Such a group was established during midterm evaluation of previous strategy, and this approach was quite successful. I also would like to emphasize the importance of ensuring a participatory consultation on the midterm evaluation, including consideration of relevant issues during an intersessional meeting of the CRIC. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Ukraine, and I now invite the distinguished representative of South Africa to take the floor.
Thank you, Chair. South Africa takes the floor on behalf of the African region on this matter. Firstly, we would like to thank the government and the people of India for the warm hospitality since our arrival, and congratulate you, Chair, for your election to chair this meeting. Africa considers the UNCCD 2018-2030 strategic framework as an important tool to guide the implementation of the convention, as it supports the long-term integration of strategies that simultaneously focus on the improved productivity of the land rehabilitation, conservation, and sustainable management of land and water resources. As the Africa region, we support the objectives of the midterm evaluation, including the evaluation scope and criteria, modalities, and organization of work, as well as correspondence elements for evaluation of the strategic framework. Of particular importance will be the linkage with the SDG target 15.3 on land degradation neutrality, as well as the assessment of the efficiency of the UNCCD national reporting and review process. The timelines for the evaluation are clear, and we are confident that any other issues that remain will be dealt with at the contact group, such as the issue of the indicators on drought, as the midterm evaluation will assess progress made in achieving the 5 strategic objectives as contained in the strategic framework. And we hope that by the end of this COP, the issue of drought indicators would have been agreed to, given the importance of drought for our region. Thank you, Chair.
I thank the distinguished representative of South Africa, and I now give the floor to the representative of China, the distinguished representative of China.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. China believes that the evaluation of the 2018 to 2030 strategy of the Convention follows the previous method of the 2010 and 2018 strategy of the Convention. We recognize the necessity and importance of the evaluation work, and we would like to make the following comments. Firstly, we would like to emphasize authoritativeness. In essence, the UNCCD is an intergovernmental multilateral environmental law under the UN framework. Therefore, in terms of the scope and items of the assessment, more opinions should be consulted with the government of the parties. In order to ensure the authoritativeness of the evaluation report and the executability of the next work plan. Second is regarding dynamism. The launching time of this midterm plan will be after COP16. Looking back, with the development of the Convention from Changwon to Accra and to Erdos, whether it is the complexity of the desertification and land degradation issues or the key demand of the parties, dynamic changes are always underway. Today, in New Delhi, we're talking about something which will be happening 4 years after, and we need to fully consider the international trend and dynamics, for example, the progress of the UNFCCC, and to make preparation ahead of time. Thirdly, we would like to emphasize on fairness. At the operational level, the evaluation relies to a large extent on the work of the experts. We recommend that the Convention Secretariat propose more specific work programs in a timely manner, paying particular attention to the openness, fairness, and geographical representation of the selected experts, so as to ensure that the team of the experts is able to systematically and objectively reflect the achievements and potential issues of the strategy implementation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I thank the distinguished representative of China, and I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of the United States.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. We'd like to thank the Secretariat for this document. We thought it was very well prepared and very helpful for our work. We would certainly agree with others who have spoken before us about the importance of the strategic plan to our work. As we mentioned earlier, it really guides the broad work of the convention, and it's a really important tool for all of us to make sure that we're on the right path as we go forward with our implementation. So we support the document, and we thought the way that it's laid out is very effective and seems like it will set us in a good path for having an effective review that takes into account a number of different factors as the convention and the world community evolves along in the coming years. So thank you again to the Secretariat for this very helpful document.
Thank the representative of the United States and now invite the representative of the Switzerland to take the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to the Secretariat for the document. Switzerland believes that the evaluation scope and criteria should also address issues such as impact and sustainability. The Bureau of the COP should consider this at the time when they review the modalities, criteria and terms of reference with a view to their adoption at COP16s. We would like to better understand the reason why the component addressing efficiency only focuses on the UNCCD national reporting and review process and does not address the 2018 to 2030 strategic framework in its entirety. Thank you, Chair.
I thank the distinguished representative of the Switzerland, and I now invite the distinguished representative of Philippines.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, as this is the first time that our delegation will make an intervention, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the government of India and its people for their hospitality. Mr. Chair, while we are discussing the modalities, criteria, and term of reference for the midterm evaluation of the UNCCD 2018-2030 strategic framework, I realize that we have yet to prepare a national action plan that is specifically aligned or anchored to the 2018-2030 strategic framework. Just like in our previous national action plan, we aligned it to the strategy 2008-2018. While we have the LDN target setting program, which contains our baselines and targets until 2030, and supported by the LDN transformative projects and programs and projects, it lacks investment framework that will put the program into action. Essentially, it focuses on LDN, but missing our initiative to address the multifaceted dimension of DLDD that includes poverty, which is the main issue that the UNCCD intend to address. Mr. Chair, we believe that a national action plan that is completely aligned to the 2018-2030 strategic framework in particular, and to the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda in general, is also of paramount importance at this stage, and therefore should be given due attention as well. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I thank the distinguished representative of the Philippines, and I now invite the distinguished representative of Saudi Arabia to take the floor.
شكرا سيد الرئيس.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I would also like to thank the Secretariat for preparing this document. And we stress that this plan to carry out the midterm evaluation of the UNCCD for 2018-2030 is extremely important to implement the convention and to evaluate its implementation in order to identify any challenges that we could have faced during the first half and to address them, which would help in implementing successfully the second half of the plan without any substantial barriers. And we stress that we support in general this document, and we look forward to address some shortages and to add some important aspects to it, such as drought, during our discussions of that particular document. Thank you, sir.
I thank the distinguished delegate from Saudi Arabia, and since this seems to be the final party who wished to speak to this issue, I now invite the representative of the Secretariat to respond to the questions and comments from the floor.
Thank you, sir. And thanks to everyone who took the floor for the inputs and for the feedback. We will integrate them as well as we can to these elements that we will provide for the contact group for it to start its work in considering this important matter. And indeed looking forward to hearing further feedback there. Thank you so much.
We have just concluded the consideration of this sub-item 2B, The committee will resume its consideration of agenda item 2 on Thursday, 12 September at 10 a.m. Distinguished delegates, I now invite the committee to begin its consideration of agenda item 3, entitled Effective Implementation of the Convention at the National, Sub-Regional, and Regional Levels. Sub-item D, Securing of Additional Investment and Relations with Financial Mechanism, Global Mechanism. Under this sub-item, the committee has before it the following documents: ICCD/COP14/7, ICCD CRIC 18/2. And B, Financial Performance of the Convention, Trust Funds, note by the Secretariat, ICCD COP14/8. I would like to remind the committee that documents have already been introduced under agenda item 6 and will be further considered in the CRIC. I now give the floor to the Managing Director of Global Mechanism of the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, Mr. Juan Carlos Mendoza, for some further remarks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Distinguished delegate, by Decision 14 COP13, the global mechanism was requested to continue exploring and developing innovative financing mechanisms and funding options to scale up support for country parties in their efforts to develop and implement transformative projects and programs, and to step up support in collaboration with international funding entities for the resource mobilization efforts of developing countries in support of achieving land degradation neutrality and more broadly the implementation of the Convention. In this context, the global mechanism has conducted resource mobilization under 3 categories of activities: assisting countries in the establishment of enabling environments at the national level, including through the voluntary LDN target setting program and the preparation of national drought plans; supporting country parties in accessing existing funding by assisting them in the preparation of gender-responsive LDN transformative projects and programs; and fostering new funding by spearheading the development of innovative funding mechanisms, including those involved in the private sector, advocating for increased allocation of resources by new and existing funding entities to activities related to the implementation of the Convention. Further details on these GM activities can be found on documents ICCD CRIC 18/6 and ICCD CRIC 18/7, which will be introduced and discussed under the CRIC in the sessions initially foreseen for tomorrow and the 5th of September. We look forward to having fruitful discussions with all of you in those sessions and receive your guidance. Thank you.
I thank the Managing Director of Global Mechanism for those remarks. The committee thus concluded. My apologies. Malawi would like to have the floor. Okay.
Mr. Chair, I would like to get to my... Ask somebody else, but I will come in.
Does a party require to take the floor? I thank the Managing Director of Global Mechanism for those remarks. The committee has thus concluded its consideration of sub-item 3D. Distinguished delegates, we have thus concluded our considerations of the items on this morning's agenda. The committee will next meet on Friday, 6 September, 10 a.m. to begin its consideration of item 3, effective implementation of the Convention at national, regional, subnational level, sub-item C, follow up on policy frameworks and thematic issues. This meeting is now Oh, sorry, before I adjourn, I would like to give the floor to the Secretariat for any announcements that they may have at this time.
Just wanted to mention that there will be a contact group on budgets scheduled for tomorrow around 1:30, I believe, but this will be announced in the Daily Journal.
This meeting now stands adjourned.